shooter if you're finished unload.
Howdy folks, it's AJ the Hunting Gear Guy, and I can't believe I haven't done a video review of this thing yet. This is the Browning A5. Mine I got for 3-gun competition, so there's a couple mods on it that you probably wouldn't want to put on your duck gun kind of a thing, but I've had this thing for a while. I love it. I love this shotgun, and I guess it's time to show you guys what this is all about. So before I get too far, chamber's empty. Nothing inside the tube. I do have a couple of dummies here. These are ones that you can get from Brownells. You can also make them yourself. If you are going to make dummies, make sure that you've got them marked or in a different color or something to make sure that you know which one's the dummy and which one's not. Why don't we get into this thing? All right, I got you real close here. Now, starting from the back of the shotgun, the butt pad is it's medium, I would say, in terms of stiffness. It's not super duper squishy. I like it. I don't think I really enjoy like a super duper squishy one just because it adds a lot of padding with no real use. Now, the shotgun does have this DuraTouch coating on it. Some users have reported that this starts getting like gummy on them after like a few years of service. I haven't really had it happen to me. I think that's because I'm in Canada. It's a little bit colder here. Maybe in like some of the warmer states, this like might bake and like melt and that kind of thing. But up here, it's been fine for me. The grip here, you can see it's that the checkering there is not very aggressive, which, you know, some people might like that, some people might not. It's got that humpback of the Auto 5, but again, this is the A5. The A5 uses a different system than the old Auto 5. They're not really related as much as the Browning would like you to believe. It's mostly just a marketing thing to make people nostalgic for the old Auto 5. But this uses a better system. It uses an inertial system instead. Coming up more towards the front here, we've got this safety here. Now the safety is extended a little bit in terms of the size. You see it's not just a straight button, it's got a little bit of a oval look to it. The other side's just round, so it makes it a little bit easier to hit the safety. I really like this for competition, for 3-gun, because it's very easy to hit that button even with the middle of your finger. Moving up to the front here, we've got a charging handle. It's not very big. It's not very like an extended one or anything like that. I find it fine. I don't really feel like I need a bigger one. I would like to put an extended release on here when I get a chance. This is the button you press to drop the bolt forward. On the bottom here, we have a shell release or lock open. So if you press that and there's nothing in the tube, what it'll do is just lock it like that, and now it'll allow you to lock it open. Now, the interesting thing on a Browning Auto 5 and the A5 is that you can still load it with the port open. So normally with most semi-automatic shotguns, you need to take your shell, again this is a dummy, and you need to pop it into the port to load it, and then you press the button to load it up. But with the Browning Auto 5 or A5, both of them do this. They have a fun little trick where if you shoot it until it's empty like that, you can take a shell, put it in the bottom, push it forward, and it automatically loads that round. That's neat, hey? And in 3-gun, that's a big advantage, because one of the things that you can do is, if you are empty, let me just arrange these shells. You can grab your shells in what's called a load 2 configuration like this, or a quad load if you want, and you can stroke both of them in at the same time, and it loads one automatically. Now that's kind of magic, isn't it? Now just to show the operation of this button, what it looks like when there's still a shell in there, if I press this button and there's a shell, you see it throws it out there, and then when I pull that back, it doesn't lock it back. It only does that if there's no shells in. So now if I lock it and I pull this back, you can see it stays back. Now you might be wondering what this is if you're not into 3-gun. For 3-gunners, this is called a match saver, and the idea with this is if you shoot it to lock open like this, you can grab this shell, pop it in, and then press the shell release to load up one round very quickly. This is more important in the shotguns that don't allow you to just load from the bottom all the time, but it's still nice to have if you need just one more shell. If you were super quick with duck hunting, you might be able to do that. It takes me about 1 second to do that load. You might be able to load one and get another round off on a duck or a goose or something like that. I don't know, maybe. Now, when we continue on to the forend, we'll see, you see this green strip here? That's not factory. That's something that I added on. I found that the forend was a little bit slippery, especially in the rain and that kind of thing. In 3-gun, I need a lot of grip on the shotgun because there's a lot of shooting and a lot of movement and that kind of thing. So I epoxied on a strip of silicon carbide. So this was all epoxy. That's what the shape that I chose to use, and I used some masking tape and then pull it off afterwards. Then I sprinkled this silicon carbide on, which is the same stuff as sandpaper, and it really grips onto your hand. It really locks on there. So not factory. If you're going to run this thing for 3-gun, I would recommend something like this. Along the top here, we have a mid bead, and then we have a fiber optic front. I don't really care for mid beads. The fiber front, hell yeah, like I really like those. Mid bead, don't really care. I'm mostly looking for that guy anyways, right at the front. This is also not factory. This is an extension tube that I've got on the front there, and this is to hold the again legally allowed limit in 3-gun for Canada. Now at the muzzle of the shotgun, we have the interchangeable chokes. Now the Browning system is kind of interesting. This is what the choke case looks like. It's got a pretty decent choke tool in there that won't slip. The thing that I find interesting is the choke tubes themselves have this little brass sealing ring at the base, which does a pretty good job of keeping carbon fouling from getting to the threads. With a lot of shotguns that allow carbon fouling to get to the threads, what you end up having is that carbon gets in there, it gets all caked up, and then it can become very difficult to get your chokes out. So this does a really decent job of keeping that all kind of in one spot. So a really good job of sealing it up and keeping that carbon from getting to the threads. So why don't we go ahead and disassemble this shotgun? So the first thing we're going to do is, before you disassemble any firearm, make sure it's empty so I can see that the tube's empty, chamber's empty, we're good to go. Next, I'm going to remove my tube off the front here. Now I've got an extended tube on here, but this is the same thing you'd be doing if you didn't have an extended tube on there. Out comes the tube and spring. And the forend and barrel are going to want to come off all in one unit. And that's really how I would recommend taking them off. And then you can separate these two from each other just like that. So this doesn't need any cleaning on it. But this is very nice for getting into the lugs and the recesses in there and just giving that a nice clean to make sure it's good to go. There's no gas system on this, so you don't need to clean any gas or anything like that. It's a fairly clean shotgun to clean. Moving up front, now if you have a factory one, this is where you'll need to press that in to get that plastic keeper out. I don't have to do that because mine's aftermarket. I'm going to tip it forward. That's an aftermarket shell follower. There we go. And next we're ready to take this bolt out. So all we need to do is grab that bolt handle, pinch it, pull it out, and then pull our bolt and bolt tail follower thing. This is what engages the recoil spring. The cool thing about these shotguns, the recoil spring is actually in the stock here, so it's well back and it keeps a lot of the weight off the front. Next, let's take a look at this bolt. Now I've got quite a few thousands of rounds through this, so you can see it's very well polished where it's been riding on the hammer or anything like that. But what we need to do is pull that pin out right there. And what we're going to do is we're going to push on it from underneath right here. I'm going to push a little bit on the firing pin just to take the pressure off. And then I'm going to just stick something through there to get that pin out. Now the firing pin will let go. I can pull it out, put it off to the side. I can pull this pin off, put it over there. Now what's going to happen is that cam pin has nothing to hold it in because the firing pin was holding it in. So that bit will come right out. And then my bolt head will come out, as will the inertial spring, this big beefy spring that was in there. This is actually what's acting to run the action. Believe it or not, all the energy is stored inside this little spring as it recoils, and then it pushes back after the recoil cycle to make the action move, which is really cool. Just that little spring's doing all that work. Now this is the time where you take out your rag, you clean this thing off, you use a pipe cleaner and get into where that spring was there, clean it all up, re-oil it, and reassemble. Next, we're going to take the trigger group out. There's two pins here that we're going to use to push out, and we're going to remove this trigger group right from the shotgun. It's a little bit hard for me to show this on camera, but I'm just going to push on there. That pin will come out the other side. There's one. And there's the other one. And now this trigger group will pop right out of there. So there's our trigger group. We can choose to clean this off. I wouldn't recommend oiling this a ton because oil attracts dirt and carbon, so it'll kind of mess up the insides here. So just a very light coating of oil is all that you really need. A lot of this oil here was spray off from the bolt from before. Now, if you need to pull this guy out right here, it's all running on that pin there. So you can choose to drive that pin up. There's actually a spot for it to come up the top there. So you can pull it out, and this extractor will, extractor, is that extractor? No, that's the shell catch, will come out. But I'm not going to do that for you guys right now. All right, let's take this buttstock off. Now to do this, we're going to need a Phillips screwdriver, and there's 2 holes down there. And that's where we're going to stick our screwdriver. So feel around in there. Once you get there, you should feel the bit engage, the screwdriver engage with the screw. You can start loosening it. If it's kind of hard to get in there, maybe just oil it a little bit. That'll just help it squeeze in there. Maybe some personal lubricant would be a good idea. Something that's not going to hurt the rubber. Oh, that one's a tough one. And it comes right off. And it's okay if those bolts just stay in there. We don't really need them to come out. We're presented with this kind of look, and carefully pull that plastic plate out. Then we are left with this look here. Now we can remove this guy right out of here if we want. All right, I just want to show you where that plate is on the back. That's where the plate is. I've got that nut right off of it. So this will just pop off because there's nothing really holding it. And there's the buttstock, and there's that little plate that was in there. And this is our recoil spring assembly right here. So if we want to pop that out, what we need to do is drive out this roll pin, and that would let us pull the recoil spring out. I'm not going to do that right now just because it's a roll pin and I don't really want to like beat it up. But one thing that I will let you know, because I use this for 3-gun, I'm only really using target loads with it. I did chop 2 coils off of this thing just to let it run a little bit lighter stuff. Because again, this shotgun is made for 3.5-inch shells, so it's made for a little bit beefier of a round than I'm really going to throw at it. Now, incidentally, if you want to adjust this thing for cast, this is where you would do it. You would adjust these little shims on this guy right here, and I put it back together like that. Put my plate back in. Grab my nut and follow it. And as I'm tightening it, I'm just looking to the front to make sure that it's absolutely equal and there's no like proud spots on it or anything like that. And it's basically the same as I got it from before. So I don't need to tighten this down Hercules strong. Just snug up there is fine. Next, I'm going to take my butt pad and put it back on. All right, it's back on. And then I'm going to take my butt pad, carefully put it on there, and carefully get it started, just going back and forth on these screws. All right, butt pad's back on. Now I need a trigger group in there. I'm going to grab my trigger group. By the way, one thing I didn't mention, this has actually been welded, so I've welded that fork just to be a little bit smoother on the lifter. As I put it in, what I'm going to have to do is move this guy out of the way. So I'm just going to move it out of the way as I'm pressing that guy in and sneaking it into the back. And I think, boy, I just nailed that, didn't I? Whoop, nope. Let's try that again. Hey, there we go. Now I can grab my pins and I can feed them into the receiver. Now with that complete, I can reassemble my bolt, which needs that little recoil spring. My bolt goes in with the extractor facing the ejection port. So I'm going to have it on my right-hand side. The cam pin, if you notice, there's a bit of a bevel there. That needs to match up with the top of this guy here. And I need the firing pin hole going back and forth. So I'm going to stick it in like so. I'm just kind of holding on to it. Next, I'm going to get the firing pin, pop it in there, feel around for that hole. Am I aligned? I'm not aligned. They give you this handy like slice on the side there, so you need to make sure that that's straight, and then your firing pin will go in. And then you grab your little firing pin retaining pin, and it goes in through the top, and presto, that's done. So now I need to drop that bolt into the receiver. I need the tail end of there hitting the plunger that goes into the recoil spring here. So I'm just going to kind of put it back. This works best if you kind of keep the gun vertically because you'll need to kind of hit that spring. You know you're in there when you feel the spring action. Next, I take my charging handle, pop it in, and I just test to make sure I'm in the right spot. Now that I've got that in, I can take my forend and my barrel, and I just kind of pop them into like that. So they just feed in like that, push it a little bit tight so it snaps, and then feed it in through your shotgun. Pull the bolt back just a little bit, and it should just go right into place. Now I need to get that extension tube on. Take my follower, drop it in the tube, take my spring and extension tube, start feeding it in. And start to tighten it on. Now, if you have a long extension tube like I have, the spring wants to torque it the other way. So I'm just going to keep going, almost there. And just look at the front, make sure that that's all nice and flush. You shouldn't be out as you're torquing this on. And then what I like to do, there's still like a little bit of twisting force on that spring, so I just like to press my follower in a little bit just to even out the any kind of torque on it. So I can feel that it feels fine now. I do a quick function test. So safety's on. I test it to lock back. I test the bolt drop and test the safety. Safety off. Fires. Holding down the trigger. It locks back. And I can test the reset. Oh, fantastic reset on this thing. So again, that was the Browning A5. This uses an inertial drive to run the action. There's no gas action in here. It's a pretty slick little system. I believe this is the same as you'd find in like a Benelli or a Stoker or something like that. So really clean action, really lightweight. There's not a lot of like tubes or gas system or anything like that up front here, and really reliable. So that's really the advantage of the inertial drive system. It is a little bit expensive. This shotgun's priced quite a bit higher than some of the other semi-automatic shotguns that you would look at for your basic duck and goose guns. Still cheaper than the really fancy stuff though. All in all, for Canada, this actually works out to a pretty good deal because this is a 3.5-inch chamber. The way it works out, it's a lot easier to just turn this thing over and just start quad loading it in 3-gun. So big advantage there. Reliability has been fantastic for me, and I really like the shotgun. So anyways, that was the Browning A5. Thanks for watching.